Hey everyone, it's Riley here, and in this quick video, I want to go over a packaging process from one of our producers, Safwan, and he'll give us a brief overview of his issue. Then he's going to take us through his packaging process. And what we're going to do is try to identify what's going wrong and how to do it the correct way. So, really quickly, I'm going to bring up a document that we can use to kind of write our notes. And for now, I will just label this page how to streamline the packaging process. And perhaps we'll change the name of it later. So, Safwan, if you could kind of just briefly give us the overview again, maybe 2 to 3 sentences.
Yeah. Like, so I start with the angles for the idea that we have, two angles for idea. And like the first hurdle that I run into is to prove that if the angle would be interesting or not. And the most basic way to analyze that for me is like I search it up on YouTube if there are any videos with high views based on those angles. And when I have those noted down, sometimes those angles are like really obvious and clear, but sometimes I really have to search up a lot of things to come up with viable angles. And when I have those angles noted down, the second hurdle is to come up with titles and scripts that relate to those angles that have like the best words in them, like which are the most comprehensive or like concise. Like that's the second struggle to come up with the best sounding titles and scripts.
All right, cool. So, if you could share your screen, I want to I want for you to take us through your process from just the beginning, and you can just highlight the steps to the end. And I'll just take note of them as we go through.
Yeah. So I'll use this video that I'm doing currently as an example. It's a video that we're making for Grim, and it's against 10. So the first angle for this one was pretty clear. I just wrote down that the Grim is playing against 10s in this game, and the notable thing that I could note down was that he gets a 6-1 kill diff against him. And I also noted down one of the comments that I thought was funny at the end of one game. And I based my titles kind of on that angle according to the title structure that we use. And after that, I wrote down some scripts that are related to that. And the second angle that took me some time to come up with was like, what should be the second angle of the video? And one thing that I could find about Tens that was also relevant currently was that he kind of made a return to the pro scene. Played for Qubit Academy against, I forgot who the other team was, but it was a pro match because one of the Qubit's players, Scuba, was transferred to NRG. So he decided to sub in and play for them. So I thought that that was interesting. But even when I'm writing down this angle, I'm still not too sure because I couldn't really find too many videos about that which got many views. Like there are some, but I'm not sure that if this is a viable angle. But still, I wrote down some scripts about it, and now I was trying to write down some titles for it too. And that's the second struggle. Like this is like the starting title, but I usually take a lot of time to like write more renditions of it so that it is more catchy and it is more like clear. So that's the kind of my process. And after that, when I'm done with this, the thumbnail strategy is like pretty clear. We just look for good balls and make them unique. So I do that at the end.
So, let me pull up this video. Do you mind sharing it?
Um, which one?
Just the Discord chat.
The Notion card?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm in here. So, just as a quick reference, this is our content calendar, and this are the 9-step process: ideate, assign, conceptualize, create, package, edit, schedule, test, and document. So, in this particular video, it's on the package stage, and that's what we're talking about in this video. So, what I want to point out first is I think the first thing that's going wrong in your process typically, something that I took note of is like you said that you're operating from a place of doubt. And what this says to me is that you don't have a lot of ideas. You're not having an abundance of confidence and evidence and inspiration for your video in the first place. And that's typically where I give you the most feedback in regards to this is to have better ideas and to have more ideas and to spend more time on the research. So the first thing that I'm going to look at is like an idea. And so there's no description of the idea. There's no evidence of the idea. And so that's where you need to start. And I had said this to you yesterday, like when you go through that ideate process, and you need to take this seriously because it's going wrong every single time. And that process first is to implement the ideation strategies and provide evidence and then agree to work on them. And so what's happening in the ideate stage is that you're getting agreement, but you're not implementing any of the strategies and you're not providing evidence. And so you're doing this step wrong. And if you do the first step wrong, you're going to do every single other step wrong. That's typically how processes go. If you mess up the first thing, then you mess it all up. That has to get corrected. That's the first thing. And I addressed this yesterday. And so step number one, ideate, find evidence. If you go and find evidence of a bunch of videos about tins, of course, you'll find that there's a lot of views, but you could refer to the videos that we've done in the past with tins. There's a ton of them. And then you could refer to videos that have been posted recently that tins has done. You could refer to videos recently that other people have done on tins or whatever the case is, because the truth is that there's a lot of content about tins. And so this whole problem of like I'm operating from a place of doubt is that's a massive issue. And it can be solved if you just go do some research and you figure out what's going on and what is getting the most attention and what's worked well for us in the past. And from that place of abundance, you should be able to define your idea. If you, one of the titles that you had said was um, Tin still fears my walls, or Tin hates my walls. This is actually fairly good because it's just the same as in the past, but you're adding the word still. But let's just say, for example, like you didn't say still, you just say fears my walls, hates my walls, so on and so forth, hates my stage. These are all titles that we've done in the past, so it's stuff that's not really unique, but your packaging or your ideation and your evidence and your description is going to help inform those things. And it seems as though you caught on to these videos that he's doing with Huber Academy. But I think just overall, that's where this problem is occurring, is just in the ideation phase. There needs to be abundance. You need to be keeping track of the views, the outliers. I mean, Teets made a video about Tins joined tier 2, underperformed for his channel. I think Tins made a video. He said, my first game back as a pro player. He did all right for his channel. It's like 1.4, but it's not necessarily like a big multiplier. You could probably get more views just making a video about Tins than you can make a video about him being pro again or something like this. And it doesn't relate to our video at all. That's like the reality here. It's like, how are you going to make a package for a Grim video that is about Tins returning to pro play when it has nothing to do with pro play? You know what I mean? Like, you need to make sense of these things. You need to write them out. And so doing research is the first step, but then like as simple as it is, like writing out what your idea is for the video. Write a description. You know, I say this so often and I said it on the roundtable call, I said it to you personally yesterday. You gotta do the process. Write the description of the idea first, then provide evidence. Because you're coming to these calls with the same problem, and oftentimes it's like, well, what's the idea of the video? There is no idea of the video right now. And so you've got to solve that. And from there, there's probably going to be, I've said this in the past, that there are a lot of ways that you can angle and position the video and appeal to the viewers. There could be an infinite amount of angles and appeals, truthfully. but we want to generally narrow it down to the two. So the angle is the what, and so that's what we want to do for the packaging, and the appeal is why. And so the angle here is pretty decent. The why, it's okay. Like it could probably be written out better, but being really intentional about your understanding of what the angle that you want to take is and why it's going to appeal to the audience is super important. So we take a look at package B. The angle that you want to take is that he was a sub for this tier two team. So that's a good what, right? Like that's pretty clear what you want to do with that particular packaging. But the appeal is not very compelling. Like why would the audience care returning to the pro scene? Like this particular video doesn't have anything to do with that because it was a month ago and this is ranked, so it has nothing to do with the pro scene. So imagine making a video about this particular player returning to the pro scene and then the audience proceeds to watch him play ranked. You're having problems writing titles because it doesn't make any sense. I don't really know what this means. Tins wanted to come back, so I walled up. You could try harder or try something a little bit different and say Tins went pro again, so I walled up or something like this. It's just like a bit loose. It's not really super correlated to the video. You could try your best. You could say something like, I think the script is fairly decent. Tins just made his return to Pro Valorant, so today can I make him regret it, or is he still the GOAT? So this is a fairly decent script, and it's not to say that this packaging angle and appeal is totally bad. If that's the thing that's getting a lot of views, that's awesome, and I fully support you. The problem here is I don't know because there's no evidence, and you're not articulating in a clear way, and it doesn't seem like you've done research. And so when you have this operating from a place of doubt, the thing is like, let me write this out on the whiteboard too. I think this will help. So when you're operating from a place of doubt, like what it sounds like is, I'll just kind of use text to write it out. The reason I wrote this down is because it's like incredibly like concerning when you say stuff like this. And you need to nip this in the bud. And I'm gonna kind of explain how you can do that. So operating from a place of doubt. That's like I took this as like that's kind of the initial stage. Operating from a place of doubt, and then you are, at least from what you had said, it sounds like coming up with angles, and then from there you are looking it up on YouTube. You're like finalizing it or whatever, and then you're presenting it for review. So the reason I write all this out like this is because let me make the text a little bit smaller so we can make it one single line. The reason I write this out is because I want you to notice what the first thing is, operating from a place of doubt. And so in the same way that I said, okay, if we want to follow the process, the process is incredibly simple. And I wrote this so like a fifth grader could understand it. It's 9 steps. The first step is ideate, and it says to implement these ideation strategies. And there's a whole um, training. It's linking to school, but there's I guess it's here in this video. And so we need to fix that link, but you can still click it through the top one. So implement these ideation strategies, find the evidence, and then agree to work on it. And so when we agreed to work on this yesterday, I said that you need to find the evidence and you need to define your idea. And so that's step number one. Got to follow the process. It's super simple. Um, and what I, so let me pause here, collect my thoughts. So if this is not being done, that's effectively what I'm saying is going wrong with everything else. Is you're not doing step number one. So if you're not doing step number one, it's going to be really hard to do the other 8 steps correctly and have success. Otherwise, you're just going to be kind of like randomly happening upon success. And a lot of times experientially, it's like that's what happens is we this video does really well, but we don't know why, and this video doesn't do well and we don't know why, and it's just random, right? And so if we want to have more predictable results, we need to follow the process. And if we don't do step number one, then it's hard to follow the process because that's the first and most important step. I say all that to say this. In the same way that if the first step is the most important one, This list of steps is why it's going wrong from a psychological perspective. We're starting from a place of doubt. And so we're coming up with angles, doubtfully, and then we're looking up on YouTube to hopefully clear up and alleviate some of the doubt, finalizing it, and then we're presenting it for review. And so my experience and what I just said is like when I'm looking at angle, when I'm looking at package B, I'm like, this is okay. Like it's solid. I could poke some holes in it and criticize it a little bit. But the truth is that I don't know because it was created from a place of doubt. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
I have doubt reviewing your stuff because you have doubt creating it. There's not going to be a scenario in which, let me move this over so that's not super big. There's not going to be a scenario where you have doubt about something, you do the work, and then all of a sudden I have confidence about your work. That's why I keep putting the ball in your guys' court when I talk about these things. I'm like, yeah, like I could show you guys a bunch of great examples of great YouTubers and stuff like this, but at the end of the day, it's like you've got to take it on upon yourself. If you want to get good at X, you've got to go find the best person in the world at X and begin to learn. If your true ambition is to become the best, there's things that I'm the best at, and those are things that I'm teaching you. And so, like, you can learn from those things, but I'm not the best at everything. And so, you're going to have to go find other people that are the best. And you're going to have to do that on your own accord. And that's the truth in this situation is you have doubt about something, you do the work. This I can't have confidence about your work if you're doubting your own self. So you're going to have to take it upon yourself to stop doubting. And how do you stop doubting? Well, it starts at step number 1. Don't operate from a place of doubt. Again, how do you do that? Step 1 of the process, ideate. Implement the ideation strategies, provide evidence. If you have a ton of ideas that you're pulling from, and maybe you even kind of clean up your ideas into just a very focused idea, and you're actually defining it in the card, and you're writing it out, and you're providing the evidence. And there's a lot of evidence, right? The training wants you to provide at least 3 evidences for the idea. There is countless evidence for tins working as a content idea, but you're also going to derive a lot of angles and appeals from that research. Do I want to take the pro angle? Do I want to take the tins fearing my wall angle? Do I want to together? Do I want to just keep it simple? Like what angle and appeal is going to work the best based on what is already working the best? And that's where your evidence is really going to come into play. And what's going to change here is that, and what ideally what we're trying to do is if you operate from a place of confidence, then it's going to change this dynamic altogether. And so that's really what we want you to do. And that's what the process is built for you to do. That's why I keep saying like step number 1 is so important. And so operating from a place of confidence, coming up with angles that you're confident about, looking up on YouTube. You don't even have to do it at that point. Cut this out. This should have been done first. Looking it up on YouTube, then operating from a place of confidence, then coming up with angles, then finalizing, then presenting for review. And so, in the same way that I wrote this one, I wish that it would go below so I didn't have to kind of rearrange this each time. You know, you probably already have an idea, but if you have confidence about something, then you do the work and you do it confidently. There's a high probability that I'm going to have confidence about your work too. So that's kind of like what I foresee happening in your work. Like these angles and appeals are cool, and the titles seem all right, and like the scripts are getting better for sure in terms of the wording, and so it's good to see that some of the feedback that we've been doing and some of the calls that we've been doing where we've been collaborating over them is resonating and sticking with you and those kind of things. But in regards to doing it faster, it's just structuring your process very intentionally so that you start in a place of confidence and start with an abundance of ideas and really getting intentional about writing it down. I think a lot of times, perhaps like you guys are picking up bad habits from me because I will just skip over everything and get straight to it. But the way that my mind works, this process is how I work. Like it is not I don't need to write everything down because this process is my brain and how I operate when I make the videos. And so it's a little bit different when this is when the process becomes a part of you. And that's why I'm saying like it might be a problem with you watching me is like I might skip over all these things and you're like, okay, well, I'll just skip over all those things too, and I'll just get straight to it and I'll just save some time. But the reality is like if it's not a part of you, you're going to mess up the entire thing. And so you need to be really intentional to learn the process and to ingrain it in your mind. And in my opinion, it doesn't really take a long time to ingrain something in your mind. Like I would have thought like you guys when I taught you guys the process originally that it would have been ingrained in your mind within the first week. But, fast forward like a couple years later, it's like I still feel like I'm always referring to the process every single day. If you really want to get better at making videos, it's like just be intentional to learn this and move forward. I think that's the biggest thing that I notice with guys and YouTubers and just really any guy information to them. How often do you have to go back to the basics and just tell them the same thing over again? And so that's as simple as that is in this instance. Like this is fairly, like I said, this is a simple thing. And so once and you just consistently do it and you commit to doing it, it's going to become a part of you. And you're not going to have that doubt anymore because you'll realize that it works. And so I think that's the main thing that's going to give you that confidence and allow you to complete it quicker and go from 3 to 4 hours to 15, 30 minutes. And that's how I'm doing it most times. It's pretty easy to do the packaging when you have a ton of ideas. And if you're always doing great ideas where there's a ton of evidence and a ton of inspiration, that's when it becomes incredibly easy to do. When it becomes incredibly hard to do is when you don't have a good idea. And I think it could it could be reasonable for you to take this amount of time on the packaging if you don't have a good idea. And so we've done videos like this in the past where it's just like kind of difficult to wrap our mind around the video because we didn't really come up with a good idea. So maybe this is soon a video. It's like not a super great idea. I think I remember doing this video and it didn't do well. There's really no evidence that this person is like a good character to show in a video and those kind of things. So it's just unfortunate. And we didn't get to do the concept that the way that we normally do, where we have 3 games against him when there was only 2. So there's a lot of things in this that we know what works, but this one was not conformed to that. Therefore, like there's a bit of doubt that this would work, and so it goes. This video underperformed. Idea wasn't that great, but a video idea like tins, such an easy video idea because we can go look up all these videos about tins, and then if we go look up Grimm's channel and kind of self-assess like what's really worked for us really well, and we just type in his name on the channel to kind of get an idea of like the videos that we made for him in the past. You can see the different angles that we've taken. You can see what's worked, what's not worked. Longer videos have done better than shorter videos. Using his name is really important. And, this video right here underperformed, so you could take notes off that. This video, well, that video doesn't actually feature tins, but there's a lot that you can learn from just taking notes off these and even looking at the runtime of the videos, looking at the intros of the videos, and those kind of things. And so there's just an abundance of work here that you can pull from. And so it should really expedite the process. And the better the idea, the faster you should get to completing it and kind of. And sometimes I will say though, like when you do have a really great idea and you've got a ton of things that you could potentially do, sometimes it can take you longer because you're like, wow, there's just so much good stuff here. I can't even make up my mind what I want to do for the video. But that's actually a great place to be in. So the simple heuristic there or the simple procedure there is just to keep it as simple as possible. Less is always more. So, doing something like Tins wanted to come back, so I walled up. When you're writing titles and scripts, the heuristic to keep it simple is like I always want to optimize for the least amount of words. So you could start with something really complicated as your script. You just want to kind of brain dump it, but refining it so that it's just a few short sentences like this, you should be able to get to that fairly quickly because that's the goal anyways. So if you just start with short, then you don't have to go from long to short. Just start with short. And then you can iterate some of the words, make sure that they flow nicely and those kind of things. And so that would be what I optimize with the titles as well. Write a title that is Tins wants to go pro again, or Tins came out of retirement, or Tins isn't retired anymore. And you could kind of base a concept around this, where it's suggesting that if the audience perception is that this used to be one of the best pro players, at least from a mechanical skill perspective, and he retired, in some way, like the viewers are like, oh, well, he's not pro anymore, that could reduce their like their desirability to watch this video, right? And so if we want to increase that perception, we could it, one could say that popular player returning to the pro scene, or if we want to be even more specific, it's like Tins was a pro and viewed as one of the best, but retired. So suggesting that he came back will make him seem like a more formidable opponent. And so I guess in that way, like also understanding angles and appeals in a deeper way can really help you streamline this process. And so my feedback in regards to the overarching problem is in relation to the ideas, in relation to the titles and the scripts. The feedback is really just like as simple as like less is more, and try to start with less first. I mean, that's really it. If you want to make use of brain dumping, that's really good. It's just like write down all your ideas. That's super helpful. And then from there, you basically just refine until it's simple. Simple meaning, kind of using a euphemism here for simple, where it's nothing can be added nor taken away. But in regards to the angles and the appeals, it's just deeply understanding what these two things are. I think that's the biggest thing that I noticed. And so we have the definitions here. An angle is a unique perspective that used to present a product or service to stand out from competitors. That is really important. I mean, that's why I put the definitions here, like a unique perspective. So if you take a basic perspective, it's not that interesting. So, this one's more unique, I would say, but its appeal is like slightly more different because the content of the video doesn't actually talk about him being a pro again or anything like that. And so if you have content in the video, or you can write a script, or there's a clip of him saying this and this and this, perhaps you can relate it. Those are things that you want to think about. So we've got the definitions there. The angle is oftentimes the what, and you really want to focus on that uniqueness of the what you're going to do to stand out and what you're going to do to get their attention. Why? And so, impressive win against a popular player. This would be that classic appeal of like celebrity, kind of the celebrity appeal or status appeal of the other person. And just intimately knowing those appeals is really important. So, I always use ChatGPT to like print up a list, but what are appeals that can be used for gaming videos? But also just having a deeper knowledge about marketing and psychology. And some of those books that I recommended earlier in the resources section can really help with that. Being able to write out the psychology of the viewer really helps. The deeper that you know them, the deeper that you can understand how to write the title to appeal to them. The better that you can explain it, the better that you understand it, the more likely it is to actually work. And so, just going back to the original premise of when you operate from a place of doubt, it's like, I don't really know. Like, I don't know if this is going to work. But the more that you prove it using the evidence, the more that you use first principles, which is what we had talked about with Ezekiel, what gets their attention and what actually entices them to click. Having more data about what they do click, what does get their attention, so that you can have more confidence about your understandings of those things. And just generally having more confidence about what is an angle and appeal. What are the ways that you can psychologically appeal to a human? What are the ways that you can uniquely position a video? from a marketing perspective. And so that's the other component of this is just having that knowledge and really knowing. I think having that knowledge will really allow you to have confidence. So I guess in that way, like maybe we can create like a little short list of things that are super important for just having confidence in general. It is doing the process, having a lot of evidence, and knowing the fundamentals. These things can give you a lot of confidence. And of course, something else that can give you a lot of confidence is consistently practicing having success, of course. So I have a pretty strong belief that if you do the process will require you to have evidence and know the fundamentals. You can't really do the process without knowing them. But if you want to take this a step further, it would be to get a lot of evidence, and it wouldn't be to, if we want to kind of deepen this, it would be to intimately know the fundamentals. Not just know the fundamentals, but like really, really know the fundamentals, like read books about them, research them on your own, watch YouTube videos, watch interviews, like take courses, like these kind of things, intimately know the fundamentals and then consistently practicing them and having success. And so I think you've been consistently practicing these things for a long time. And so it's just about being steps and then you've already had success. And so as you have more success becomes more profound, it will just reinforce the the principles of doing these steps and that they work. So that's my breakdown. It's quite extensive. That's what I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That helped me realize like a very basic law. We talked about that yesterday too. I kind of understood like when ideating, I should look up for good ideas, but it's really the same with angles. If I just have a lot of evidence in the idea tab, I can really come up with a lot of angles that other people have and like the things that have worked. So I'm just like doing it the wrong way around, trying to come up with an idea and then trying to prove it. Like that's a flawed way to work on things.
Yeah, maybe another way that you can even connect the information further is if we go back to this definition of angle, what is the unique perspective that you can approach that you can use to stand out from competitors? You really need to know what the competitors are doing, and that's correlated to finding the evidence. If you don't know what they're doing, then there's no way for you to stand out.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll show you a video that I did this, and it's like such a great example because I put this into practice all the time, but I think this one's just like a really great visual example. So we made this video for Devi a long time ago in the Apex scene, and Ezekiel and I worked on this, and I think it was Ezekiel. It could have been another editor, I forget. But we made this guide called How to Super Glide in Apex Legends, and you can see that it did really well. 600,000 views, and that was 3 years ago, so that was a good video for us. And whenever I did my research for this, the thing that well, I found out what a super glide was. So what he's doing in the thumbnail is the animation that you do when you go to super glide. I also figured out that it needed to be up on a object that was up high. And so as you can see in the scene, he's like climbing a wall that positions him higher. And you basically kind of like go from the wall and you go out. And so of course there's the arrow. So like I had to understand what the super glide was. But whenever I did my research, the thing that was so clear to me is that the main thing that they were trying to do or trying to achieve wasn't just the super glide, but it was to be able to have consistent speed. Every single person talked about this in their video. People would put it in their thumbnail. The thumbnails that said consistently or consistent got more views. So I made that really bold and distinguished at the top. And what helped me stand out from the competitors was that everyone else was doing like third person scenes of a person doing a super glide. They didn't show it from the first person perspective. So I stood out because I did the first person perspective. And I predicated it on consistent speed being the primary benefit. And a lot of the other thumbnails were really cluttered and they showed it from third person, so you couldn't really see the character very well and just like wasn't clear what movement they were doing. When people play Apex Legends, they play from first person, so it's easier to recognize if it's from first person. So because I did all that research, I was able to uniquely position this video. And my appeal was that you're going to learn how to do this and you're going to get consistent speed. And that's what they want. That's the primary benefit. So if you go look up this guide, like how to super glide, this was like the most viewed one. And this was like a hot topic at the time before they fixed it. So we were able to dominate. This guy who, yeah, we could ever so briefly go through these. You'll see none of these guys got close to our amount of views. Well, it looks like this one got a lot of views, which is pretty cool. But that was 2 years ago, so and it was on a clip. So as far as like an actual guide, step-by-step guide, I always got the most views, and it's not even close. This was the main guy that had gotten a lot of views with right here, and you can see it's from third person. It's really hard to see what the colors are. He doesn't advertise the primary benefit, and it's just cluttered. It's just hard to see, and that's kind of how everybody's was at the time. So I don't need to go further into this, but that's, a connection between the research and the angle. Is like if you don't know what all the other videos that are getting a ton of views are doing, it's going to be really difficult for you to actually create the angles that are going to stand out from the competitors. And if you don't know what they are really clicking for and what they really want as like the perceived benefit and appeal of this content, then you're not going to be able to do that. You're just going to be aimlessly in the dark with a list of appeals on ChatGPT being like, all right, I'm going to use the appeal tier less meta. And so all of a
Yeah,
sudden you're angling the video about tens and you're like, tens tier list. And you're like, that's going to work. Obviously, that's not going to work because it has nothing to do with the video and it's not appealing to this particular audience. So upon doing the research, it becomes fairly clear like what main appeal the content has, generally speaking.
yeah, 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 definitely. I guess I had this like flawed understanding of dividing it because I thought that my thinking was that since these videos are not that structured and not that complicated, so we can just skip some things. But like finding evidence that's not skippable, even if it's a video against tens, it would always help to just like note down all the videos people have done against them recently that have done good. And like if I have all of that knowledge, I can obviously operate from a lot of confidence when coming up with angles or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, cool, cool.
Good. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Now I just have to be disciplined in the way I work. That's my main takeaway. Like just follow the thing, no matter what the project is. Like follow the whole process.
Yeah, it's good. All right. If you enjoyed that video, watch this one next. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.